Today, I'm joined by the voice of the Houston Texans and Vice President of Broadcasting, Mr. Vandermeer. Marc, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing today?
It's my pleasure. I'm doing great. Wish we were having a better season, but you know how it is.
Yeah. So, what's kind of like the schedule for you on a game day like yesterday? Because, it's a dream of mine to become a play by play announcer. So, what's kind of like, how do you prepare for an NFL game and how do you lead up to it on a Sunday?
Well, during the week, I go to practice a few times, which helps, but it also is just good to refresh your memory on players' numbers and things like that. But it also helps just getting the vibe of the team and what's going on out there. But honestly, the biggest part of my job as far as getting ready for a game is memorizing the depth chart of the opponent and all the numbers. And different guys do it differently. I don't make a board like a lot of play-by-play announcers do. I just memorize the depth chart and the numbers. Everybody but the offensive line of the opponent, because those guys you never have to really call on the fly. But the more time I spend memorizing numbers and their corresponding names, just the better it is for me because I don't have to look down, and I don't want to have to look down all the time. I don't really use a spotter. But I have John Harris who does the sideline reporting, and he's in cue in my ear. So when he's not on the air, I can hear him, and he can help me if I get stuck on a number.
Okay.
Plus, I keep a roster handy in front of me in case But it's so much easier to find because when I started doing play-by-play, and I used a regular board, it was in the format of a depth chart, like they all are. Well, the problem is if a number 20 tackles somebody. Well, 20 on your numerical roster is right after 19. It's very easy to find. 20 on your two deep, you're like looking around like, oh, here he is, and then, by then it's, a few seconds have gone by or whatever the amount of time is. And I don't think it's as clean a call. Nothing's ever perfect, but I spent a lot of time memorizing and that's really my week of prep. Plus, obviously all the important notes on what's going on with each team and how they look going into a particular year. Into a particular game, into a particular weekend.
Right. So I saw this video of you commentating the Texans versus Titans game earlier this season. And I saw you were looking through binoculars and you were calling the Tyrod Taylor rushing touchdown. So are there like monitors you can look at, or are your eyes just always on that field?
Always on the field. I don't use monitors. Now, last year was a completely different situation with COVID, but I always use binoculars. Every play you've ever heard in Texans history is done through binoculars. That's just how it is. I like getting in there nice and tight. I don't use, I could get ones that magnify even more, but I use 7x35. So I just get in pretty tight, but wide enough where you can still see a lot of action. If you get in too tight, if you used a telescope or something, well, all you're seeing is one guy. But the binoculars really help because you can see the numbers very clearly. You see what's happening clearly. You can see body movements. If you're some of these stadiums, and they vary, right? Some of them you're closer than others. At NRG, you're pretty high up. You're as high as you can get in the stadium. Without binoculars, it would be hard to identify all the numbers, and it's just not very clean. But with binoculars, you get into a perfect distance. I really like NRG for calling a game. It really makes it nice. I never used to use them, when I was calling football, like back at UMass. I was in the Atlantic 10 conference it was at the time. And, those stadiums were a little lower. But when I got to University of Miami, everything got into bigger stadiums and I just started using binoculars and I've used them ever since. It's no problem for me, not a hassle at all. With monitors, the only time I might look at a monitor is if there's a real-time monitor and I can look at field goals. If you're watching a TV feed, it's a few seconds later, so that's not going to help you. But if it's a real-time feed, they'll show the uprights because the big thing with field goals as a play-by-play announcer is, unless you are dead sure, you always wait for this or this because you want to know, you just want to know from the officials whether it went in or not. So that's how I handle it.
Right. So you were talking about when you were the voice of the Miami Hurricanes and Central Michigan. So what would you say would be the major differences between preparing and calling a college game versus the NFL?
The NFL's kind of easier, to be honest with you, because you have fewer players.
Right.
It's a cleaner game. It's played cleaner. And what I mean by that is you just have fewer substitutions, the clock runs very nicely in the NFL. College football is very clunky with the clock. Games take way longer. Halftime is really long because of the bands, and that's an important part of
Yeah.
the tradition and
Mhm.
history of it all. And sometimes you have duplicate numbers. The NFL, the only time that's going to happen is in the preseason, maybe with
Right.
duplicate numbers. And during the year, you're not going to get that kind of thing during the regular season. I just think the NFL, I don't want to say, easier is a different kind of thing to say, I know, but the stories are so well known. The challenge in the NFL is giving somebody a note or information on a player that they might not know, because everybody knows these guys, it seems. In college, especially if you're calling a Central Michigan, like if I'm at Central Michigan, the voice of the Chippewas, and I'm doing Central Michigan versus Miami University in Ohio,
Right.
there are stories from the opposing team in particular that no one's ever heard before, right? So that's kind of cool to be able to deliver that information. In the NFL, everybody knows these guys. It's
Yeah.
kind of tough to give some original stuff, but the games are so compelling. The league is so well designed. It feels like everything comes down to crunch time for most of these games, and it's the best thing in the world to be able to do on the radio right now.
Right. Yeah. So on Sunday, the Texans did lose to the Seahawks 33-13, and
Yep.
they moved to 2-10 on the season. But they started well with a great opening drive touchdown, but they ended up scoring 0 points in the second half. But they were hanging in there, down 16-13 at the half, 19-13 late in the third. But the offense just couldn't really generate anything. But one thing that I did take away was Davis Mills. I thought he had a solid performance, 67% completion for 330 yards and a touchdown and no turnovers. So how would you assess his overall performance yesterday?
Well, I thought the first half was really good, being able to score points. I mean, it was too bad. And again, it's a team thing, right? It's an ensemble thing when you're looking at offensive production.
Right.
It's too bad that they couldn't get into the end zone when they had first and goal inside the one. He hit Brandin Cooks. They called it a touchdown. They took
Yeah.
it back. They had the procedure penalty, formation penalty. They couldn't punch it in. So they had to kick the field goal there. And I think that at the time that affected them maybe a little bit. But, who knows? Uh, he's a rookie. So you have
Right.
situations like when they were pinned back deep in the first half and they call a couple of handoffs to Rex Burkhead and they don't go very far. And then Mills scrambles around. He runs out of bounds, which I'm sure he would love to have back. He would want to slide if he could do that again. Little things like that. I think that he's definitely made progress. He gets better incrementally. And him sitting for a few weeks and watching Tyrod Taylor do it, I think he looked a little better. He definitely did. And, throwing for the yardage is one thing, but being able to score in the opening drive for this team is huge to go up 7-0. That's
Yeah.
great. So let's see if he can build on that when he goes to Jacksonville and continue to play well. Because one thing about Davis is he's got a lot of talent. He just hasn't played a lot of football, even in college. So he needs to be able to play more so you can further evaluate him. And he can just get the reps and improve and show what he can do. Because I think there is a higher ceiling there than what you've seen.
Yeah, I definitely see some really great things from Davis. And talking about that defense, I thought they were pretty solid until late in that third, but eventually they just couldn't contain Seattle and Russell Wilson, where Seattle scored 14 points in the fourth quarter. And those deep plays by Seattle, I think really hurt the Texans in both rushing and passing. Where Rashad Penny had a couple of big touchdown runs for 32 and 47 yards. And Russell Wilson had some great deep passes to Tyler Lockett, especially that one at the end of the half for 55 yards was something that really stood out. But that's something the defense you really cannot allow those kind of deep shots like right before halftime. And especially since the game was tied at 10 at that point. But, what was something that you saw from the defense that really stood out?
Well, it's a familiar theme. I mean, they're able to keep the Texans in these games. Even in the blowout games, you look at the end of the game and it's 31-0 or 31-3 or 31-5. The games where the opponent scored 31 points, if you look very closely, the defense was enabling them to hang around, but the offense was never able to get going in those games.
Mhm.
Now, against the Seahawks, it's a one-score game with 11 and change in the fourth quarter. And the defense, even though they gave up the deep shot, the 55-yarder and the two long runs by Penny, they were able to keep the Texans in it for a long period of time, but the offense couldn't capitalize in the second half. They had the ball, the 50-yard line or better 3 times while the game was still very much in doubt, and they couldn't move it deeper than that. So, or deeper than the 43 or whatever it turned out to be. So they have to do better as a complementary football team. Offense has to do it. Obviously, special teams, they've had their moments this year that have been really good, and they've had some they want back. But overall, I think it's been pretty good. And you have to be able to capitalize on offense. I mean, it's a league where you have to score to win, or your defense has to be lights out for the entire game. And it's just too hard against so many of these really good NFL offenses. So you better be ready with your offense. And I think they'll continue to improve. It might take an offseason of talent acquisition for them to really make the leap you're looking for, but they can get more consistent with what they've got right now. We'll see if they can do it in these final 4 games.
Right. So, I mean, being 2-10, it's been a rough season winning wise, but I mean, I'm sure you see mistakes made on that field and questionable decisions. So, how do you kind of approach that with any constructive criticism, like talking, doing play by play without, going too far to kind of maintain that professional calling? I mean, there are fans that are frustrated with the play. So, I mean, I'm sure during the broadcast, you try and address the fans' feelings about how their Texans are playing.
Absolutely. As a hometown broadcaster, you have to be sensitive to what the fans are feeling. I mean, they're the most important people. They're the people who support the team. And you have to know that they're going to be disappointed. So when the opponent scores or does something big, I say it in kind of a big way, but I say it sort of angrily, if you will, or disappointingly, like,
Uh,
oh no, touchdown. You have to give it the passion. Some guys just go quiet, like, touchdown Seahawks. I
yeah,
don't do that. I like to give it a little oomph because I'm upset. I didn't want to see
yeah.
them score, and they're upset too. I'm the players are upset, and you want to sort of have that passion. People are exerting themselves, and as far as questioning things or criticizing. Look, I stick to the facts, and the facts are, if you're not doing the job, if you're going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, I say that, just 4
Mhm.
3 and outs in a row. That kind of tells the story, right?
Right.
Or whatever the rushing yard total is, if it's not very good, that tells a lot of the story. So that's what you want to do. Continue to tell the facts because it is real-time journalism. I mean, you are delivering real-time breaking news. Is it a first down or not? Is it a touchdown or not? Did you get the stop or not? I mean, this is stuff that people want to hear when they're driving around in their cars. And that's basically the bulk of radio listenership, is people driving around in their cars or listening on the
Right.
app at home or however they might be. So you want to be there for them and give them that information with passion and accuracy. And I like the combination. I've always wanted to be the voice of a team. I've never really wanted to be a national guy where I didn't have a stake in it, really. I love being able to win and live and die with wins and losses and that kind of thing. So obviously a season like this is difficult, but we've had some good ones too, and I'm just hoping that we have another good one real soon.
Right. And something that really stood out to me in the game was that the Texans were really able to target Brandin Cooks a lot more. And I was really happy to see that because he had 8 catches for 101 yards. And I feel that, Tim Kelly, the offensive coordinator, should continue to try and get Brandin Cooks the ball more. And, I think deep shots to Brandin Cooks should really open up this offense. He's been good at that. I think they should try and do that a little bit more.
Yeah, Cooks is one of the best receivers in the league, and it's really great that the Texans have him. And I know that, look, you've had some good ones here, right? You have Andre Johnson, who's
Mhm.
potential Hall of Famer, and I hope he gets in this coming off season. DeAndre Hopkins, outstanding, obviously, and I think Cooks is probably the 3rd best receiver in the history of the franchise. I mean, look at what he does consistently. When people know what you're saying, that they want to get the ball to him, yet he's still able to get the ball anyway. He's that valuable and that effective a weapon. I think the challenge for them is, deep shots, great, but other teams do know that.
Mhm.
You want to get Nico Collins involved, and they did
Right.
against the Seahawks, and they have to do it even more. And Brevin Jordan, the tight end. So, they do have some weapons to work with here. Let's see if they can continue to develop them. And Cooks obviously being the biggest part of it.
Right. So eventually, my goal is to become a play by play commentator someday. So, what advice would you give to someone like me who wants to do that? And maybe what are some things that you wished you knew when you started doing this?
Oh, that's a good question. The last one, it's funny because I had my eyes wide open when I started. I knew that I needed to learn the craft, right?
Yeah.
And I was doing high school games, and I've done some high school games under some really, adverse conditions, but I was really grateful to be able to broadcast the game. doing games from the stands and a tape recorder on a radio station that's a daytimer, meaning a lot of stations still shut down power at night. So we'd do the game into a tape recorder at night, run it back the next morning on the air and with the commercials inserted. And I've done numerous games like that earlier in my career. I've done a game, one of the first games I did was in a car on a hill, just overlooking the field, and we're in a car, and that was the booth. It's really interesting when you're starting out. I think that high school is an excellent way to do it because especially in this state, my gosh, I mean, there's some tremendous high schools. Obviously, it's better than doing college football in a lot of places in this country. And particularly with the playoffs right now, I'm seeing some of the guys on TV. These are big time productions for high school football. I think it's really important to learn at that level, or even middle school, whatever, because now everything's digital. You can do a game. You have this channel, right? You can do a game on anything these days, which is a tremendous thing. I mean, when I started on the radio, I started doing a talk show on a 1,000-watt station. And, I had to sort of buy my way on the air and sell the commercials. And I knew the business side of it. Now I would just start a YouTube channel. So I think it's just great to be able to do that these days and learn that way. But that's the best way. Learn the craft, high school, get good video together, good audio together, and move up from there. That's the best thing I can say about it. And that's really what I did. I just kept on pushing and searching for job opportunities, and luckily I found them.
Right. And that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I hope the Texans can play some good football to finish up the season.
You're doing a great job. Keep it up. And it's a real pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing it. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, bye-bye.